Well, hello everyone. Thanks for coming to the session today. Really looking forward to having this conversation, and I hope it's very conversational in nature, even if it's conversation going on in your heads. But I am very excited to be here. My name is Sarah Rasmussen. I am an engagement partner for First San Francisco Partners, work with lots of clients across lots of different industries at all levels of their maturity in the data governance journey. Today we're going to be talking about why data governance has to be at the forefront as we enter into this new world of AI and automation. So my background is coming through the ranks of development, learning all the old technologies, into the new technologies, into data engineering, data architecture, data modeling, overseeing that group, and then in a very regulated organization, which got me into data governance. So I've led whole programs and efforts, and now I work with organizations to mature their data governance journey. So thank you for being here. Today, we're going to be talking about if organizations or you are prepared for the change that we're already seeing. It seems like every week I'm starting to see where AI is creeping into my world, and it's pretty fascinating. Last week, maybe the week before, on Zoom conferences with a client, all of a sudden the meeting minutes started to appear, and people were sending those meeting minutes and saying, hey, these are better than what we took, and they were summarized and they're beautiful, and we can just edit those and make some minor improvements and share it. So right, wrong, and different, we have to figure that world out. So are we prepared? Where does data governance come in? And then how can we, as data practitioners in this area, be part of that change? So before I get into the presentation, I would love to go around the room and just get some feelings around what we're experiencing as AI comes into the forefront. So what are you feeling in your organization, in your personal life, around ethical use of data? What are you excited about? What are some fearful things that you're thinking about?
So I'm a consultant, so I help companies set up governance, but I also have a non-profit it's a non-profit association about the ethical use of technology. So I have a lot of conversations in Belgium and Europe with big companies, and what I see is there's awareness about the importance of governance. There's awareness also about ethics and AI, but there's no sense of urgency yet. And so because they're almost always occupied with business as usual and the low-hanging fruits instead of implementing the proper governance.
Great.
They're aware of it, there's no sense of urgency.
So I'm going to try to repeat this back. So you're in consulting and also run a nonprofit. So just the urgency of getting a foothold in what this means to us. Anyone else?
I'd say value, right? I think right now our governance strategy isn't there, but AI is coming in with just random opportunities and just trying to understand truly the value that we should be chasing for certain areas of our organization. So that's probably a good concern.
Yeah, so with everything else going on, and this is extending what you were talking about, there's so much work, day-to-day operations, and where does data governance fit in? How do we get up to speed in the data governance area to catch up to the AI train? Anyone else? All right, we're going to be talking about some of those fears that I'm hearing about and that I'm feeling as well. So this is going to kind of set the stage. I think you maybe can see it. So this is a big body of water. You could see on the other side, there's a storm coming in. There's big waves. You've got a canoe. You don't understand if these people know what they're doing. Why are they paddling into a big body of water and could be hit by lightning? Who knows what the lake is like? And this kind of feels So the idea behind governance and AI and why we want to bring data governance into the picture is to start to help the explainability. So you can have a lot of unknowns within this picture, but then you start to know the background of what's happening in this picture, and it starts to unfold. So in this case, the back person is my son, and he's an engineer and a product engineer, and he actually works for the company that builds these canoes, and he actually built this canoe. So he's spent a lot of time out on the water, up in the Boundary Waters in Minnesota, if you know where that is. It's like out in the middle of nowhere, but he's very comfortable. Lake Superior, like all over the country. The front person is my nephew, had never been in a canoe before. So he was very worried, wanted to wear the life jackets, didn't want to get too far, and thought it was just nuts going out into this water. So there's a lot of different things at play here. Is one, my son knows this canoe really well and how it handles on the water, and that it's supposed to be used on water like this. He also knows this lake very well because it's near where he grew up. So he knows he's in a bay and it's not going to be over 3 feet deep. He also knows that the other side of this lake is about 5 miles away, and that when there is lightning 5 miles away, the alarms will go off on the lake to tell the boats to get off the water. So he has a lot of information around it, and I think about that for AI, explainability, understanding, and breaking the components down to start to reduce the fear, to start to understand the capability, and starting to understand the intention behind it. So are we prepared for the change? I think back to 3rd grade when I entered into the computer room in my school. There was one computer, it was in the center of the room, and there's one screen, and we all surrounded the screen, and then we entered a very basic calculation. And that ages me, I understand that. But it was like such a mystery, like how could you enter 3 + 5 and then get 8 out of this box? It was remarkable. And it was also there were a lot of lights and a big, huge box and like a really nice stool that everybody was fighting for to sit on. And then we go to this world, the world of this. Like, it's so remarkable, the change, and what did that change bring forward? And we all navigated through that change. So some of the thoughts around AI in your organization is to help with operations, right? Bring some of those efficiencies in place. Those repeatable processes no longer need to be done by a human being because they are repeatable, understandable. You've done them for 15 years. Why do we keep hiring, training, and working the staff on that? That brings some fear to a lot of people in the organization. I think of like call centers as an example of that, and how bots have been brought forward to help with call centers. There's also product management and product engineering and understanding where should we go with our next product. How should we make that change with the product? And that's pretty exciting. We've got, just customer service in general and in sales, or making some expectation of where they're coming from, understanding their background, understanding what other customers like them were interested in understanding, or getting questions to get answered. So there's a lot of applications, and now we're seeing a really big boom in applying AI to the world that we live in, is data governance, data quality, master data management. There's opportunities to, leverage chatbots and put the AI against the content that we already have, and start to say, if a data steward made a decision like this looks like the same decision. Could we connect those business terms? Could we say this data quality issue was handled in this way? Can we apply that to a very common data element that looks like it has all of the same data? So it's really interesting to see that start to unwind. I think that there's a lot of personal things that we might feel the impact to, as well as organizational areas. So thinking about, this is Rebecca Jones, so she worked for the Florida Department of Health, and she was a whistleblower at the time of COVID. So she said that the numbers that were being leveraged to run the models of who tested and was positive for COVID was very skewed in order to look like Florida was a lot healthier than the rest of the states. So that was something that she brought forward, and it's the ethical use of AI. It's understanding, the background of that, putting bias into that, and how are we going to manage the intent of the questions that were answered, and then what happens with that output, and is it interpreted in the way that it actually was delivered? So AI steals my job. We hear that over and over. Are we going to have a job in the future? And I just thought it was pretty fascinating how many people talked about talking to bots through, especially our pandemic. and they were like, oh my gosh, they're really much nicer than my own personal spouse. So I think that's funny. But anyway, that is something that we need to start thinking about for ethical use of AI and breaking that apart. So Maria Japel is a leader in energy. It's a global energy organization. And I found this was really fascinating. I went to a conference earlier in the year, and she was talking about how her organization, and she was charged with just stepping lightly into what does this world of AI look like. So there's a lot of thought around this. There's personal rights to speech and use of information, and what about the results coming out of it, and are those used, and plagiarism, and it goes on and on. So it's kind of a scary world to lean into if you enter your prompts into something like OpenAI and get the answers back. It's pretty remarkable, because I test a lot of what I know as a practitioner in the data world for 25 years. I test what I know, and it comes back in a really beautiful way. So then I think about, all right, as I'm bringing new people on or working with clients, how can they use that? But how do they know what it's bringing back is real and accurate? So what was interesting about what she did was she was just, when anybody went online and went to the URL associated with this, it was telling them that they were being monitored, and that there was just, we're trying to figure out as an organization how it's being used, but be very thoughtful in the output, and we're just needing to understand how. So there was a little warning, but it didn't stop them. And she was just really just counting how fast this was. And I think it's remarkable. 30,000 employees worldwide, that's huge. But from January to April, a huge jump in people using this. And so then, and that's just, from the World Wide Web. In that time, she started to, what technologies are we bringing into our organization? Are we using open source AI models? Are we using proprietary models? What's the difference between those two? So I think up until this point, people have had a pretty good handle on the distinctions between open source and proprietary technologies that come into our architecture, but it's not so much the technologies, it's the output too. So how do you control the output, and how does that output not continue to get fed in? And it's just, there's a lot more considerations around the laws, and I think that's why people are so, even the top leaders and the people that have created this technology are very present and speaking up, which I think is really good for all of us. But it's scary, it's unknown. I'm not up here trying to tell you all that I know what this world is. So I do know the data governance world, and I have some ideas around bringing that part in. So why don't we talk about it? All right, so I touched a little bit on architecture and technology. And so thinking about where data governance is and bringing the focus of data to an organization and thinking about a data governance operating model in order to bring the people and the process to the forefront around data is really, really critical at this juncture. So we know and understand using a data governance operating model that you also bring in other governing bodies like risk, like security and compliance and information architecture, enterprise architecture. So I think having a data governance operating model and just understanding of how do those groups work together and start to have those conversations and why is it that data governance should have a seat at the table in this is really critical right now. Then you look at the next area is that collaborative governance. What is your strategy around AI within your organization? What areas of AI is your organization looking to leverage? What are those areas of AI that you want to be very careful of your organization stepping into? So part of your overall data strategy, since data is what is fed in, and data and data assets are coming out, right, of the pool through running AI and machine learning models. It's really important to have that data-centric lens through all of this. So understanding that strategy, having leadership at the forefront, and thinking about those bigger, broader data domains that are fed into this is really critical. I talked a little bit about the organization and understanding how that data is organized and brought in, and the understanding around that is really, really imperative. The directives around setting a tone for the different data capabilities in your organization is really critical, as well as connection of the policies. So I think of a really common policy we come across, which is the de-identification policies of just taking customer data, de-identifying, and then being able to capture it in a data architecture that allows a broad use of that information. Now we're starting to get into the place where those de-identification policies, you can get back to the people if you're not very careful. You can put bias into it. If you know certain pieces of information, it's very easy to get back to the person. So that's something that needs to be really thought through as data is being defined and data sets are being set up for these models, and understanding the access management side of that. The organizational change management, we know, and we were talking about over here, is like the tactical execution of building your maturity within your organization around data governance and data management. That organizational change management part, getting the key messaging and ideas out to the organization is really critical. And even at this point, just awareness campaigns are really huge, and setting the tone for expectations of needing to mature at a faster pace potentially than you have before. So in that statement, I want to go back to the organization side of it, and we're seeing an amped up need for finding those resources in the business that really know the data and investing in those resources. So we all know it's the people side of it that's really, really hard right now to get the people to do the work of data stewards, right? But that is going to be the area that we need those experts in place the most, especially as AI takes hold. So thinking about where automation of AI could actually free up some resources and have them at the forefront of doing the work of data. All right, so we have different data capabilities. We have data management capabilities and data enablement capabilities. I want to just touch on where we see success is leaning into the metadata management capability first for understanding and bringing stewards on and growing their skill set, because that's really what's needed. So you start with defining and understanding that data, and then you can step into the data quality accountabilities and how they work with those data custodians or technical data stewards to implement everything as needed. I do see master data and reference data a critical component. I'm not rating these. I'm kind of stepping through how to focus and step into AI world and governance, and this is the recommended approach. But reference data is used extensively in the modeling, but more so master data is around that ethical use of data, and you think of consent and preferences, and that's a big area that you just need to have an eye on for master data. And then you have data enablement capabilities, and I touched on this a little bit of how to use your data governance operating model to partner with these other areas and bring this forward in a cohesive approach. Because the last thing you want is data security to put out one message, data governance to put out another message. They're similar to each other, different roles, different expectations, maybe different cadences of sharing that information, and people get confused. So a lot of this applies to general data governance too. So I think, looking at, this is just a conceptual architecture model. And I think this could be used as a tool for you to understand where are you, do a heat map. Where are you pretty strong in these areas? Where do you need to lean into them? Where in your organization are you identifying risks for the world of AI? All right. So being part of that change. I just want to kind of step back and give a high level of the different AI, ML key concepts and think about, where does the world of data and data requirements fit in here? So we really like, as part of working with clients, to make sure that the overall strategy, business strategy, is understood. And then where does that data strategy fit into that broader vision? And so just even understanding those big questions that an organization is asking is informing what their priority is and how quickly they want to execute on that priority. So leveraging your data governance operating model, all the relationships in that, is really critical in understanding that. It's then on the data discovery, the input side of it is, what are all of your sources of information? What is used most in your organization? So really understanding your key data domains, and then breaking it down to common data sets. So we talk a lot about data domains and critical data elements. I would say that you can look at models across your organization. You're going to get to a lot of your critical data, and then also understand what data your organization doesn't have potentially and what is brought in or purchased. And then you've got your model part of that, where you're training the model, you're leveraging the data, you're maybe adjusting the data, you're finding data quality issues. So it's really important to have that explainability as you step through these different areas, and you're, there's a lot of time, energy, and architecture that goes into development of a model. And once a model is ready for production, it's really expensive. And it has really, really high expectations for what's coming out of it. So I think you just have to understand the rigor that needs to be part of your model management and then model risk management to, kind of expose some of the needs of data and data governance. So that's a great angle to come at working in these areas. And also, it also helps with other, areas in getting organizational readiness for data governance. And then the outputs of the model. So did it answer the question? Will it stand the test of time? So I had an experience when I oversaw the data governance and data management organization. And all of a sudden we heard that one of the models that had been running for 2 years had come up with a result that caused a decision to be made, and they actually put to rest a product that was really, economically awesome in the past. And then it was discovered that there's a data quality issue. So the purchased customer data that was fed into the model for years, we got a test file. And it was 6 months prior, and it just blew everything up because it was many millions of dollars into this investment at that time, including hiring 2 really high-level data scientists. So that was just an experience for me to understand all of the rigor that needs to be understood going into these models. And I think we've learned a lot as the world of data in this space over the years, and we have some technologies and tools that can help us along the way as well. All right, so I think what we want to start to do is change that, as I talked about before, kind of breaking apart that black box that we don't know. We're going to feed some data into it and get a result and not know. That's really not the case. We know a lot. So really just understanding what the model initial inputs are with the model intent, and then how are you managing that data and making sure that it's up to speed for use within that model throughout. And then, classification of the data is really key. And then what is that acceptable use? So I just think about my information being fed in. I was able to see my name on a segmentation list of individuals. And I think I was like, middle-aged mom who doesn't like going to the mall or something. It was really ridiculous. And I was like, that's kind of true, but why is that like how I'm summed up? So like if that's fed in, what is the output of that going to be? And what does that mean for like what, I guess I get a lot of online shop here, but anyway, it's just, you have to think about what is being fed into it? Where does that information come in? And is that even fair? Like, is that, like, I feel like I have a lot more going for me than that summary. But thinking about your data sources, thinking internally as well as external sources of data is really important. And if you're working with data providers, have a relationship with them. You just don't pay them and let it go. So put in your contracts with your data providers expectations of quality, expectations of or SLAs for delivery. If you see something come through where you're supposed to get 3 million rows and you get 200,000 rows, that's going to have huge ramifications if it's not caught. So put some teeth into those. I'm sorry if there's any data providers here, but it should be a two-way street, and it's even more important right now as we enter into this world that we know and understand our data, and that we can have that conversation with the data providers of where did this information come from, how should I use it, that sort of thing. And then experiment. documentation of the model, documentation of the feature cards, the data sets that are within the feature cards. There's a lot of great, I know Google has an AI playbook card for all the metadata that you can capture around a model. There's not a clear-cut answer or technologies that have that right now, but there's a rush to get out there and start to get that information. But it's really important. And I think there's a lot of homegrown. I work in the healthcare organization. A lot of this metadata needs to be captured right now for regulatory needs, but there's some of that metadata that can be exposed more broadly within your organization. So just think about that as you move forward. And then those model consequences. What is it, the decision making that is done with the output of that model? And is that the right intent? Is that what we should be, we as an organization? And then what are those results over the years of use? And thinking about how do we think about that going forward in developing new models. So I've kind of, this is, the next couple slides are just really areas for you to use to start breaking this apart. It's work that we do in, implementing an ERP is understanding what's the business case. Why are we doing this transformation? What are the key data domains in that? What are those data sets? And kind of breaking that apart, but do the same thing with the model lifecycle. And so this next slide, I should just get kicked off the stage because that's an eye chart. But it's really a tool for you to use to start asking the questions. Do we have these answers? Are we asking these questions? Where do we put these answers or store this? And how can we, as we go through these questions, start to understand where we're at in preparedness for this technology going forward. And this is just, starting to show why we're all here and why we need to keep coming to these conferences. There is no taking over our job. We need to be at the forefront of the content, the concepts, the decision-making, the conversations. I think that, while it's really remarkable to see ChatGPT spit out results for how do you grow a data governance organization and build maturity over the next 3 years, whatever your prompt is, it's pretty remarkable what it brings back. But getting into the day-to-day business decisions or updated data, I think ChatGPT, they say the data's up to date as of maybe fall of 2022. That's their new thing. So it's like pretty interesting to think about what is being fed in to those models. So we have an opportunity in data governance to start to inform and capture. It's the same capabilities that we do in other areas. It's just breaking it apart and capturing it in a different way potentially, or under a different type of product. An AI model and the output it might have its just a little bit different. And so I think that it's really good to just kind of bring forward across the organization where you should play in this life cycle and see how you can embed stewards in at the right places. All right, so here's just a little bit of background of where you can kind of set the tone. We've seen a lot of value in just inventorying your data models, or where are you using AI within an organization, or what technologies are starting to use AI. So just inventorying at the highest level and not getting into all of those, it starts to show the risk or where your company is in the maturity of this area, and where you might need to lean into and bring broader awareness. And then I had mentioned it costs a lot of money to do model management. So really thinking about how do you create repeatable processes? How do you, I know there's so much work happening to move information into the cloud and start to structure data in a way that's accessible and understood and segmented and tied to a catalog and having controls in place as the data moves throughout that. Really starting to think about that reuse is critical because there's so much information, there's so many legacy systems that this is a great opportunity to so if you're stepping into it and you're like, here are the models, or here's the technologies that we're using for AI. The next area is, what are those common data sets? And those are very much at the logical level. It's not getting into exactly where that data is. It's what are those common data sets? What are the usage rules around that information? And just that's a great way to step into this. And then thinking about your data assets. So those metrics, the output, understanding what they are for and how you reuse them, and the output of those, the model brings that transparency, understanding, and hopefully trust. And if there isn't trust in it, there's conversations to be had. So this is where data governance can help to facilitate the decisioning, bringing the right people to the table, and really helping with that organizational change management as you navigate through this. And then, I work a lot with research teams, and they are like, kind of get out of my way. But what's happening now is they're like, hey, I want to apply this chatbot onto my data, or I want to get this chatbot onto the back metadata repository and tell me what are those most used taxonomies of information. And so there's a need to have a little bit more rigor around how data is stored and setting up productionalized. So while researchers they're like hands off, but they can't, they have to pay to play, and some of that pay to play is to understand the bounds in which that they can play. So that's a really fun area to lean into right now, because there is a lot of opportunity for self-service in these cloud solutions. So I know that that's a lot of people's strategy. To make that real is hard because you need to architect the common data in ways that you can pull and segment it, put it in an area that can be done in a safe way. But this is where metadata management and data quality management and policies and procedures and people that know the data start to come alive. So I hope you're all getting this. It's making sense to you, but my whole thing is just about the explainability, and that there's a great opportunity right now for us. So black box to the glass box. We've been talking about that, and I hope that you've gotten a lot out of this so far, and happy to talk more. So this, the idea of a lot of what we were talking about in those tools is to start to bring awareness through metadata management, data quality management, access management to what is happening in the world of models. So that is all I have, and I wanted to leave some time for questions.
in terms of data life cycle from ETL, vault control, and data up to model and implementation, where do you think see the clients or companies in general start with AI implementation? Is it across the board or specific things, or there is a consistency?
So across data lifecycle management, where are companies starting with AI? And is that AI for, because there's different types of AI, right? So like there's a lot of AI happening in the data governance tech and data management tooling, which is helping to bring that forward. But across the lifecycle, I feel like it's those the data stores, the cloud analytics solution is where they're applying that the most right now. But I know and understand that all of the companies that have operational systems are also looking at how can we apply AI in the day-to-day use of that as well. So I think right now the exploration is mostly in data stores, data warehouses, but it's just the technology is changing so quickly that we'll see it in other places. Already are. Any other questions? All right. Well, thank you very much. I hope you got something out of this session.